Am I recording? I'm not recording. Okay. Hi guys. So this video is basically going to be on market failures, and I'm more specifically going to be looking at what the government's reaction or how the government gets involved to limit market failures, right? Or to correct the imbalance due to market failures. So firstly, I hope that we all understand what market failures are. So market failures occur when the forces of demand and supply within the market fail to distribute enough resources or goods and services in the correct way, right? And we basically looked at two types of inefficiencies that cause market failures, right? You will remember that we have the productive inefficiency and the allocative inefficiency, which we also call the Pareto inefficiency, right? So what is the productive inefficiency? That is where you fail to make the maximum amount of goods and services at the lowest cost possible, right? With your resources that you are given. So for example, if your resources are not used efficiently, if I give Zahra 20 ounces of gold and I give Mikael 20 ounces of gold, and Zahra manages to make 30 bracelets and Mikael managed to make 50 bracelets, it could be, and they were also given the same amount of time, it could be that Zahra wasted her resources. She either wasted her time or she didn't actually, maybe she had some offcuts that she didn't use to the best of her ability. So productively, she was not efficient, right? And that can be shown on this production process. At point D, if you are not producing on the production possibility curve, you are not efficient, right? Productively efficient. Then there is a second type of inefficiency, which is the allocative or the Pareto inefficiency. And this inefficiency says that if you do not distribute the correct mix of goods and services that consumers want or demand, then you are allocatively inefficient. So for example, I know for the fact I have 16 girls and I think the boys are about 14 or 15, right? And I say, right, tomorrow all going to wear yellow and the boys are all going to wear red. And I bring 20 red and 5 yellow. I was not allocatively efficient because I needed to bring the correct amount of yellow to red sweaters for the boys and the girls in the class. That's a very simple explanation, but basically you need to have the correct quantities and types of goods and services that the public demands, basically. Okay, so that's just the reasons as to why we are inefficient. What I'm going to look at now is, you can obviously read through the positive and the negative externalities, as well as also look at why does market failures happen, right? We did that quite a bit, but I'm sure you guys can read through it. I want to focus on the graphs because I know that you guys struggle with the graphs, but there really isn't, there's no need to panic with regards to the graphs, right? Now, there's market failures that occur, right? And there's reasons that market failures occur. So the government has to have an intervention, right? The government needs to do something so that the market failures are lessened. So the first thing that they do is, we know about there's direct controls that can pass laws or regulations to reduce negative externality goods. So we know for a fact that cigarettes have a negative externality, right? And what the government actually does is, I don't know if you've ever noticed, you are not allowed to advertise cigarettes, right? So that's a law that was passed. You are also not allowed to, on this clearly has to state the dangers of consuming a cigarette, right? So that's direct controls. And in the imperfect market, we know our imperfect markets are our oligopolies, our monopolies, and our monopolistic competitions. And we know that we went through in quite detail the competition policy, the competition commission, the tribunal, etc. So if they are guilty of disadvantaging consumers, they are actually brought to law, etc. Right? Okay. So the next one is establishing minimum. The government will enforce minimum wage. I think we all know what the minimum wage is. Sometimes, if companies are left to themselves, they would really pay workers very, very little, right? So the government implements a minimum wage so that workers are not exploited, and also it is to correct the imbalances of the past, as well as a form of income distribution and wealth distribution, right? You will see that one of the reasons for market failure is income distribution and wealth distribution, the unequal income distribution and wealth distribution, right? So how does this minimum graph look, minimum wage graph look? So you'll see we have the demand and supply. So for each of these graphs, you must be able to recognize the graph, explain the graph, and the effect in the market. So I'm just going to write that. And I think if you know that for all of, what did I do? If you know that for all the graphs, then you are on for the graphs for the minimum, for the market failures, right? So you must be able to draw the graph and then explain the graph, as well as the effect in the market. Right, so let's start with drawing the graph. Always start with your axes, right? And very, very important is labeling your axis. Quantity on the side, price on the side, and here they just made it the wage rate, but the price of the wage would also be fine, right? So demand and supply. So if the market was left to demand and supply, the wage rate would be here at the bottom, and let's say it's 10 Rand. Okay. So if the market was left to itself, the wage rate would be here at the bottom, 10 Rand. But the government says, you know what? That is way too little. We're going to make the minimum wage, let's say 25 Rand. Okay, please go and Google the minimum wage. I know it's a decimal, it's 25, it's 22, 23 point something. So I'm just using a round number at 25. So go and Google the minimum wage, right? And there we go. So once the minimum wage is put in, so the minimum wage is put above the equilibrium, right? And the minimum wage is put above the equilibrium because the government says that is too low. The minimum wage is too low, let's put it higher, right? And then that obviously, so I'm explaining the graph. I'm saying my wage is 10 Rand. I can draw the graph. I'm saying my wage is 10 Rand, and I'm explaining that the minimum wage is put above the equilibrium at 25 Rand. So what is the effect on the market? Let's just have a look what the effect on the market would be. We will see that the demand for wage, so the demand for wages or the demand for labor is lower than the supply. What does that mean? That means that there's more people supplying the labor. There's going to be more people willing to work. So more people willing to work. And because the wage is higher, less businesses demand workers, because they don't want to pay that extra amount. They will rather employ less workers, remain profitable, and pay them a higher wage of 25 Rand. So what does that actually result in the market? A surplus of labor in the market. Okay. Hope you guys are happy with that. So draw the graph, explain the wage in the market is 10 Rand, and once equilibrium hits, the equilibrium wage rate is 10 Rand. Once the government enforces the minimum wage, it's 25 Rand. And what is the effect on the market? Right, let's move on. Okay. Right. Can I just say that the minimum wage and the minimum price works exactly the same? So I'm not gonna go into too much detail when we do the minimum prices. Okay, right. Now let's look at maximum prices or price ceilings. Maximum prices or price ceilings. So it says here a maximum price can be set on goods such as basic foods, housing, and transport. Why? Because they are basic necessities that we need, so we don't want them to be too expensive. Okay, so the government will do that. And let's have a look. Now, the most common mistake made is because this is minimum, people think it's there at the bottom. It's not. Right? The minimum is above the equilibrium and the maximum is below the equilibrium. It's basically swapped around, right? So what happens here? So firstly, we need to be able to draw the graph. So what happens is we have our price and we have our quantity, demand, downward sloping for demand, supply is up, and we have an equilibrium price here. So let's say the equilibrium price, and I'm just going to use a controversial one of electricity. Let's say Eskom wants to make the units 100 rand a unit. I know that's a crazy amount. I'm just making up my own numbers. Eskom wants to make the price of electricity 100 rand a unit. According to demand and supply, there's a huge demand for electricity and there's a very little supply. So obviously, be a lot. But the government says, you know what? That's a bit too high. South Africans need electricity. It's a basic item. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a minimum price of, let's say, 30 rand per unit. Okay. Now, what does that result in? It actually results in businesses leaving the market. So what is the effect on the market? Because businesses want to make a lot of profit, right? So the effect is that you will see here, the supply is quantity one. So the supply is less. Here's the supply and the demand. Supply is here, demand is here. So supply is less than demand. And what does that mean? It means that there's a shortage of market. I think there are a shortage of item in the market because the businesses essentially leave that market. Okay, I hope you guys got that. That was just a quick explanation. And now setting minimum prices or price floors. This is exactly the same as the minimum wage. Do you see? Okay, so what happens is you have your demand and supply. There is an equilibrium price. Right? The government says, you know what? And it's usually on like agricultural goods because agricultural goods are really cheap. They need the farmers to make a profit. So let's say the government says, you know what, that's really little. They have a lot of expenses. Let's try and help the farmers out. And let's make the minimum price for apples 5 rand. Right. Now, what does that result in? Remember I said A, draw the graph, explain the graphs, the prices there. Government sets a minimum price above that. And what does it result in? What is the effect on the market? The effect on the market is that supply is more than supply of good is more than the demand. Plus of goods in the market. Hope you guys got that. And you understand that there's my supply, there's my demand, my quantity supplied is there, my quantity demanded is there. Obviously, the law of supply says the higher the price, the more supply there is. The higher the price for demand, the less demand there is. So that's going to be the effect on the market. I'm just going through things very quickly. Right, now let's check out the next thing that the government does is taxes and subsidies. So, any item negative externality, we are going to put taxes on that prices. It says there to recover the external cost. The external cost is the cost to society, right? And then anything that has a positive externality, for example, education, we're going to provide producer subsidies. Okay, in some cases we have free schooling, right? In areas that need the parents don't really have money to send the kids to school, you'll have a free schooling system. Okay, so let's look at this one. Right. What happens in the market? So we start off first, number one, draw the graph. So I'm drawing, right, my quantity this side, my price this side, and I always just start with demand and supply. And I know here they did not, but you try to label your original equilibrium as E and show the shift to the equilibrium, right? So if this equilibrium is E, we're going to show the shift to the second equilibrium, which is maybe E1 or E2, however you'd like to label it, right? So there's my original equilibrium. The government provides a subsidy, right? As soon as the government provides a subsidy, well, I hope you guys remember what a subsidy is, right? It's amount of money given by the government to producers. You can get a consumer subsidy as well, right? So the supply, so they give it to schools so that the parents don't have to pay school fees. The supply moves to S1. Why does the supply move? Right? The supply moves to S1. Remember, we always said a shift right in supply is an increase in supply because there's a subsidy. There's more people willing to provide education. And look what happens. The supply increases and the price goes down. That's very important. The price of the good or service, because here I use the word education, the price of the good or service decreases. And what does that result in? So what is the effect on the market? Just write it there, effect on the market. The price of the good or service decreases. Right? So we can see that it went from P to P1. But at the same time, the quantity goes up. Quantity supplied and demanded increases. So that is the effect of a subsidy in the market. Why do we want, remember, subsidies will only be provided on goods with a positive externality. Like something that society needs, right? For example, bread, milk, etc. Right? So there we go. What is the effect of the market? The price drops and the quantity supplied and demanded increases. Right. Now, I see they don't actually have a tax one here, but okay. The tax one would obviously just be the opposite. The aim of the tax, right, is to the demand curve will decrease, right? And at the same time, once your demand decreases, your quantity is supposed to decrease in the market. The price needs to increase, right? So let me just put that there. You will see it in your notes though. So the tax prices, the aim of a tax is to increase the price of the good and decrease the quantity demanded and supplied. Okay, I hope this helps. That was just a really quick a quick summary of your graphs. And yeah, don't forget to go through the cost benefit analysis as well, understanding why we do a cost benefit analysis, because we're basically trying to weigh up all the costs, weigh up all the benefits. And if your costs are bigger than your benefits, then you're obviously not going to go through with a project. Right. So yeah, you guys can go through that. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe.